Quigg. All right, we're back right now. Very honored, very privileged to have our next guest on the line, all the way from Lancashire, United Kingdom, undefeated WBA interim super bantamweight world champion. Excited to talk to him. There's a lot to talk about with him tonight. Scott Quigg. Scott, welcome to ATG Radio, man. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much.
Hey, I got to get into it. Doss is poking me right now. He has to jump in there. Doss.
Scott, I'm gonna be honest with you.
Yep.
We're gonna get to the meat and potatoes of this conversation, this interview. You know, the thing that everybody wants to know, that everybody always asks you, but I got to ask you myself. You and Carl Frampton, is it too soon, or you want to do this later on, or are you ready to go with it now?
I mean, it's a fight I want, and it's a fight Carl wants. People were calling for this fight 6-7 months ago, and that was way too soon. I know how much these fights being built, and the more each fight by fight, the fight's getting bigger. I personally want it to happen this year. I'm looking to have it at the end of this year sometime. That still might be a touch early, but I'm, a fighter is a fighter, and they want to fight. People saying they're better than who, or I want to be number one, and I want to prove people wrong that who thinks he can beat me. So it's a fight I want this year, but I'm looking towards the back end of the year. So to let it build that bit more and keep it bubbling and getting bigger in a minute.
Hey, and that's a good point you made there, Scott. Now I'm going to talk to you about this too. Is mentioning 2 years ago you had a huge fight to a promising super middleweight coming out of the UK, James DeGale, George St. Groves. In my opinion, and I know we kind of spoke on this earlier off the air, it was a fight that happened way too soon. If it was to happen this year, if it was to happen next year, and these guys were still undefeated, it would have been huge. The winner would have probably, you'd have probably had a world champion in there at the time. I know you and Carl are fighters. You just want to fight each other. You just want to prove who's number one. You got the media down your throat. You got your team down your throat. Fans, they want to see it. But business-wise, if you wait till 2014, get the fans just get anxiety about it, and then there's so much more money on the line. I mean, you're a world champion right now, but there's so many other fighters in super bantamweight that you could fight, so many other fighters that he could fight, and then eventually you guys meet up. Both of you as world champions, so much money, so much at stake, and that's a real mega fight. I mean, I don't know if you agree, Scott. I don't know, Doss, if you agree, Jenna or Elliot or Tim. I don't know if you guys agree either, but I'd say let them wait.
I mean, you've made a good point there. If we was both to meet at the top, what a fight and an event that would be. That's in an ideal world, but obviously you've got TV who's pushing the fight and promoters who are getting, stick off the TV because they want them to make the fights. And so in an ideal world, that would be the best scenario. But there's a lot of things that will probably make the fight happen a lot sooner and probably will make it happen this year.
Well, let me ask you this, Scott. You are a champion. You are the WBA interim champion. What's the word with Rigondeaux? Rigondeaux holds the WBA, the full WBA title. He's fighting Anita Donaire. When is that? Are they going to push that, or right after he fights, whatever the result is of the Donaire fight, are they going to push Rigondeaux on?
I mean, he's one of them. I'm not sure about that. He's fighting Anita Donaire next. Like I said, we've got to see what happens with that, and in the meantime, I've got to stay active and stay busy and fight some people in the top, some of the other top fighters in the division, and work my way and getting more experience at championship level to stand me in good stead if the fight with Rigondeaux comes off, if he can defeat Anita Donaire.
But you got people, you got like Bernard Dunn saying, a former champion himself, saying that you guys should wait. You should, kind of like what Frank is saying. You guys should make it make it more into a super mega fight. Maybe a year or so down the road. You also got people comparing, Frampton to Barry McGuigan, saying he's going to be that great. You got a guy in yourself. You had 12 amateur fights. You haven't had a big amateur. You're learning on the job. You got a guy like Frampton that's had 160 amateur fights, pretty pedigreed amateur. But you're, had a lot of a battery of tests. You're supposed to be one of the fittest athletes in the world. What do you think about what people say? I mean, a lot of people say that you're a very fit guy. You've had all the tests done, but it doesn't matter to a lot of people. You might be a very fit person, but you still have 12 amateur fights to his 160. How would you counter that when people say, "Well, this guy has 160 amateur fights"? What do you have?
I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how fit you are, skills and the win your fights. And don't matter how fit you are, you've got to be good enough to beat the other person. When people say he's had this, he's had that, I had a Muay Thai background, and I had 69 fights, winning 68, losing 1. So I've always been I'm used to being in the ring. I only had 12 amateur fights, but I've took myself over, to the States on a few occasions, getting top sparring and trying to gain experience wherever I can and keep progressing and keep learning. And that's how I'm trying to claw back the experience that Carl's got over me in the amateurs. I mean, to be honest with you, I think the amateurs and the professionals are two different sports.
Well, my last question, my last question, real quick. Like Frank mentioned, you got David Price, you got Tyson Fury. They get a lot more hype than usual because, for one, they did have an amateur background. They fought each other as an amateur. You and Carl never did. But the main thing is the trash talk. You got these guys that, mainly Fury, basically calling them every name in the book on Twitter, going back and forth. Promoters offering money, 500,000 pounds and stuff like that. You and Frampton, you guys are, pretty casual together. You don't have a lot of beef there. Do you think that kind of hurts the outlook of a potential fight? It kind of, tames down the hype a little bit.
No, definitely not. It's like I say, these are different situations than you've got with Price and Fury. Me and Carl are both, respectful to each other, but we're both on the previews number 1. You ask 100 people over in England who win out of me and Carl, and you've got a 50-50 split. So that's what's drawing the attention. I mean, you've got Barry McGuigan, who gives me quite a lot of stick. So me and Barry McGuigan's got a bit of needle between us, and that builds the fight. But to be honest with you, I think Barry wants to fight me more than Carl. After his last fight, Barry was saying, you're next, and he's getting a bit carried away. But it's like I said, that builds the fight as well. Like, there's a lot of things over here that, like, Barry puts in the press and that, and it's little things like that and help build the fight.
Hey, Scott, this is Ali Vasquez. How you doing?
Hey, Elliot, real quick, Jenna has to jump in. She has to jump off real quick. Jenna, real quick,
okay,
Elliot.
No problem.
Sorry, buddy.
Hey, Scott. Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Well, what I wanted to ask you was, you actually got your biggest exposure in your last fight. You had a rematch of Randall Monroe, but you were on the undercard of Ricky Hatton's return, and I was just wondering, what was that whole experience like for you?
I mean, that was a good experience to be around such a big event. Ricky Hatton, as you know, has got one of the biggest followings that there's ever been in boxing. And to be around such hype and to get used to it, it was good to gain that experience for the future years. Like, hopefully I can top a bill at that magnitude myself, and to be around it's given me a good idea what goes on. And like I said, I got a lot of good exposure and on the undercard, boxing on the undercard to that.
All right, and you fought Randall Monroe, and you did obviously quite well in the rematch. Can you talk about what was different between the first fight and the second fight in terms of your approach?
I mean, to be honest with you, the approach was the same, except we've got better sparring in. We brought Julian Ramirez over from Los Angeles, and a French kid, we brought him over for the sparring, and Julian, he helped me out a great deal. The sparring he had with him was perfect, and that was the main thing that everything else that in camp that we did for the first fight, we did more or less the same, except we brought better sparring in. And like I said, I thank Julian for coming over, because the sparring I got with him helped me so much and the fight was so much easier. I mean, I think, to be honest with you, if the clash of heads wouldn't have happened in the first fight, it would have been the exact same outcome. It was just that the clash of heads obviously made me a lot more frustrated because I honestly believed that I was going to do what I did in the second fight was going to happen in the first. So for 5 or 6 months I was frustrated, and I took that out on him in the second fight, and it helped me a bit more, to be honest with you.
Okay, all right. Thanks so much, Scott.
Thank you.
Hey, how you doing, Scott Quigg? This is Ali Vasquez.
How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the fight with you and Carl Frampton. There's been a lot of fights in the sport that they kind of put back these undefeated fighters because they want to wait for the right time so they can have a major event. But on a few occasions, one of the guys lose their undefeated records, and then the fight is not as as attractive as it once was. Would you rather have the fight with Carl Frampton now than possibly later in the future that one of you guys might come up with your first loss?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, if I was to lose or Carl was to lose, that would make a big dent in the fight. It wouldn't be as appetizing for the fans, and obviously it wouldn't be as most wanted. Like, the TV wouldn't be asking for it, and people wouldn't be demanding for a fight like that. So that is a worry. I mean, I'm confident I'll stay unbeaten, and he'd do the same. But it's like, you never know in boxing. One punch can change a fight. So that is a problem. That if that was to happen, it would lose a lot of steam and a lot of momentum. So I think that's why this year I personally want the fight at the back end of this year, because you wait too long, and sometimes, like I said, someone can get a loss. And these are the fights I want to be in. I want to be in the fights that the public demand and the TV want, and everyone wants to see on paper a 50-50 fight. So I want to be in them sort of fights, and I'm 100% confident the day we meet that I'll win.
And if not Frampton, if not Carl Frampton next, would you like to entertain the idea of possibly fighting Ringendow or one of the other champions at 122?
Yeah, definitely. You've got Victor Serratas, who Rendell Monroe beat, who's fighting for the WBC title. So I'd be interested in fighting, Victor Serratas. I'd be interested in fighting anyone in the top 10. Any one of the top names I'd be interested in fighting, because they're the fights I want to be in, and I believe I'm good enough to be in the mix with them.
And my final question. Earlier, Doss mentioned that you took battery of tests were actually performed on you. Can you describe what kind of tests were actually performed on you back earlier in the year?
I can't think of the exact name, what it was called, the testing I was having done. But it was to do with endurance levels, and I was having blood taken out my ear every 3 minutes. I had a oxygen mask on. I was strapped up with loads of different wires. Don't ask me what they were doing. I was there as a guinea pig, and they were just testing me, and they come back, and they said I was one of in the top 2% of people in the scores that what they'd ever been tested in that lab. And you've got like the likes of Mo Farah, Chris Hoy, and all the top Olympic athletes who had been in that lab. So I'm up amongst some of the fittest in the world.
Okay. Thanks for your time, Scott.
Hey, Scott, this is Doss again. I just want to chime in. You got a very deep division you're in right now. Your promoter Ricky Hatton has been there. He's one of the guys that went to the States and actually did very successful. Yeah, you're on the collision course right now. You're probably the closest UK fighter right now that has a chance to come to the States and fight in a big money fight. Yeah. We just had Gavin Rees go fight Broner, but your division is very deep, especially deep in American television. what kind of conversations have you had with Ricky Hatton about maybe, the conversion from the UK to America, since it looks like it could happen?
Yeah, funny enough, after my last fight, probably about 3-4 weeks ago, we had a meeting and we were discussing things like that, and he said, like, we both agreed that a bit of American TV exposure in America, to go across the pond and try and get a bit of exposure over in America and try and build towards a big fight over there. Like I say, we sat down and spoke, and we're still on early stages yet and thinking the way we're going to go. But that was a conversation that we had, and we're interested in coming over there because they're the fights I want to be in, and you want to be amongst the big names, and to do that you've got to go over and across the pond.
Well, my final question is, you mentioned about Barry McGuigan before. Seems like it's been kind of heated between you and him. Barry McGuigan, kind of a different story. I mean, he came up and he had a lot of success. But one guy that a lot of people anticipated him fighting, from the UK, that happened later on in his career was Jim McDonald. But that fight happened. It was one of both guys' last fight, and he lost that fight. Do you think that kind of he shows a little bit of bitterness towards you because of what happened in his career?
I respect Barry for what he as a fighter. He achieved. I thought he achieved great things in his career. And I wouldn't say he was bitter or anything like that. I would just think he's very attached to Carl at the minute. He's his manager, and I think he's closer than he's got close to him, and he wants him to win. And anytime anyone says I'll beat Carl, he seems to lose the plot a bit and go off on a rant. So I don't think he has any. But I think he's satisfied with how his career went, because if it was me, I'd be happy with that sort of career he had and that. And I don't think there's no bitterness between how his career ended towards me, but I think it's just that he's Carl's manager and he gets a bit excited at times.
Well, yeah, and one more thing real quick. You are the champion. If that fight is going to take place this year, are you going to kind of take that champion stance? Champions walk out last. They basically get whatever they want when they're fighting. Are you going to take that champion stance and basically say, hey, I'm the champion. You need to come here to England and get this?
I'm one of them. I like going into the Lions Den. I'd gladly go over to Belfast and fight him, or either way. It doesn't matter to me whether I come out first or come out second. The only thing that matters to me is I will have my hand raised at the end, whether I come out first, come out second, or fight him in Belfast, Manchester, Bury, wherever. As long as I have my hand raised, which I know I will do, that's all that matters to me.
Thanks, champ. Appreciate it.
Hey, Scott, Tim Cudgett. Real quick, I just wanted to get a few predictions off you for some upcoming fights. We mentioned Rigondeaux a few times in the interview. I just wanted to get your thoughts on who you think will win in the fight that's going to be coming up between Donaire and Rigondeaux.
It's a tough one. It's a tricky. When people ask me this, I get a bit tongue-tied. I do slightly edge with Rigondeaux. I think he'll stick to a game plan a lot better, and I think after 5-6 rounds, I think when Nonito, if he doesn't get someone out with her, he loses his way a bit. It takes him a while longer to figure things out, and he gets stuck in a bit of a rhythm, and he can't seem to. I don't know. I think Rigondeaux. It's going to be a cagey fight, and I think Rigondeaux will hold his cool a lot better. But I could be wrong, and sometimes I have.
I got one more for you. Big fight in the UK this weekend. David Price taking on former title challenger Tony Thompson. You think Price will be too much for him, or you think the experience at Thompson will weigh in on the fight?
It's a good one. Price is the toughest fight to date, and I think the experience that Thompson has got, he could and will cause him and show him a few different things that he's not seen before. But I do expect David Price to. I believe he will get him out of there in between 6 and 8 rounds. I think David Price is a massive talent, and his punch power is phenomenal. And I don't think any heavyweight, if he hits him clean, will be standing up to his power. So I think David Price will stop him later on, to be honest with you, which would be a big statement.
One more. You think Audley will pull out Prizefighter again, or do you think somebody else is going to take it from him?
Who knows what Audley's going to turn up. He talks a good fight, but a prize fight is anyone's game. It's 3 rounds, and if you start slowing your first fight, you're out of the competition. But like I say, Audley's got all the skill in the world, but he just doesn't seem to be able to perform under those bright lights when it matters.
All right, thanks, Scott.
Scott, we appreciate your time, man. We know you got some stuff to do. I want to give a big shout out to Paul Speak for arranging this, and Scott, you joining us tonight's pretty big. I know there's going to be a lot of listeners from the UK and of course the United States as we are following your career. I want to tell everyone, follow Scott Quigg on Twitter @ScottQuigg. Anything else you want to plug to let the listeners know where they can check you out and follow you?
Not just look for keep track on Twitter, and hopefully there'll be some news announced by the end of the week, and it'll be big news, hopefully.
Well, Scott, we appreciate your time tonight. We love to have you back on the show in the future, if that's okay with you, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.
All right, champ. God bless, man, and have a great night.
Bye.
Take care.